Yeah.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. This is our regular scheduled meeting Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. Will you join me in the flag salute? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Directors Fardonish,
Here.
Gardini,
Here.
Logan,
Here.
Pearson,
Here.
and Peterson.
Here. Okay, we have some special reports this evening. First up is a highway patrol. I do not know your name, so
Anna Carry-On, sir.
welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Carry-On. I recently promoted into the Templeton CHP area as of September 1, 2023. I'm originally from the Central Valley, Fresno area. I am enjoying the change of pace and the scenery here. It's a breath of fresh air. In the past few months, I've been learning the area and recognizing some of your roadway hazards, such as the deer. It's really dark, so my eyes are still trying to focus. I'm used to a lot of light back home, and here it's very dark. I'm in disbelief that I get to patrol Cambria and enjoy the beautiful coastal views. And now I have the pleasure of presenting to you the Templeton report for the period of November 1st through November 30th. We investigated a total of 21 crashes, 15 of those being property damage only, and 6 of those involving only injury. 3 of those crashes involved the DUI driver. Fortunately, none of those crashes resulted in fatalities. We had a total of 55 enforcement contacts, which included 29 citations, being primarily for speed. We had 1 speed citation of over 100 miles an hour. We had 1 seatbelt violation, and we are currently being more proactive and vigilant about increasing our seatbelt compliance. We had a total of 3 DUI arrests, which is the same as it was last year. Overall, enforcement numbers are slightly down, possibly because we have more officers on vacation during the holidays, and a few less resources to deploy on a daily basis. I'm filling in for my Lieutenant Stewart, and I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I will be available. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Sheriff's Department, Commander Manueli. Welcome again.
Good to be here. Good evening, Michael Manueli, Commander, Sheriff's North Station. I have your report for November 2023. The station had 1,313 calls for service compared to last year, 2,051. That's a drop of about 36%. Compared to Templeton, accounted for 305 of the calls for service. Compared to last year, there were 337, a 9% drop. San Miguel accounted for 175 of those calls for service. Breaking those calls for service down into individual reports, the station had 318 reports compared to last year, 228. That's an increase of 39%. You heard me say calls for service were down, but the number of reports were up, which is very interesting. It means more serious type calls will be made and we're not getting as many less important calls. For Templeton, we had 129 reports compared to last year, only 74. That's an increase of about 74%. Huge increase in the number of reports. San Miguel accounted for 48 reports. Breaking those calls for service down into individual categories, looking at assault and battery. We had 6 calls for service generating 4 reports. We had a victim show up at a local hospital reporting an incident which had occurred in Lompoc. And then we had 3 domestic violence reports. There were 17 disturbance calls for service generating 3 reports. We had a combative patient trying to throw a table through a window at the local hospital. And we had a report of a subject dumping dirt on the roadway, making it impassable to cars. We had one burglary report, and that was 4 subjects wearing dark clothing, hoodies, going into a cannabis location. And when deputies responded, they found a vehicle leaving the area. They were able to stop that vehicle and identify those 4 subjects. 3 went into custody and 1 was released. We had 3 calls for service generating reports, 3 reports. We had a wallet stolen from a vehicle. Keep your vehicles locked. We had a wallet stolen from a victim's purse at one of the local stores. Don't get distracted. If people ask for help of getting this over here, or can you read this can for me? They're using this tactic a lot. One person will distract the victim, another person will go right in, grab the wallet out of the purse. They'll continue shopping. They're down the street buying gift cards or cashing out on something else. Be very vigilant. The last report was a jar full of money was discovered missing after an occupant of the house moved out. Again, this is the season for thefts. This is the season for porch thefts, package thefts, unlocked vehicles, gifts. If you leave valuables in your cars overnight, they will smash windows and grab that stuff. It's a big theft season. Vandalisms. There were 3 calls for service generating 2 reports. Caller observed a subject who appeared to be vandalizing a phone booth. We responded to the area, was able to locate that person, and we cited them for the vandalism. And vehicle mirror was broken during a dispute over a guest parking space. 4 reports of trespassing, no reports generated. Phone scams, 2 calls for service generating 1 report. This one is interesting in that subject was having difficulty making a PayPal purchase. Tried finding a phone number for PayPal using the internet, called multiple phone numbers, ended up leaving a voicemail at one of those phone numbers, got a call back, said, we can help you reclaim your account. All we need you to do is go buy a whole bunch of gift cards. Person went to 4 different stores in the area, gave that caller all the codes and account numbers, and realized I've just been scammed. $4,000, not going to be recovered. Lastly, there were 14 suspicious circumstances generating 5 reports. We had report of subjects wearing dark clothing climbing on a roof. We had a plastic bag with suspected drugs located. Report of suspicious vehicle possibly involved in drug activity. We got there and the subject was in fact huffing drugs. I remind you, we're expecting a very powerful winter. Let's hope it's just mild, get constant rain instead of a whole bunch of rain. But again, the County Office of Emergency Services is reminding everybody to look at, be familiar with readyslow.org and your area, where you are, so that you can look at that and easily call if you're under an evacuation warning or a evacuation order or whatever the circumstances are. That is my report for this month.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any questions? Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Order of business, does any of the board members wish to change the order of business? Seeing none. Members of the public may address the board on any item of interest in the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. So are there any people in the public that would like to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. My name is Greg Rowe. I'm gonna use this a couple minutes to introduce myself, because I've never met most of you. Mr. Brilson knows who I am. I live in the Creston area. I'm a retired LA City fireman. I worked 30 years for them. I've been retired 16 years. I own a cattle ranch in Creston. I've been the Water Resources Advisory Committee person for Debbie Arnold for the last 10 years. I am the representative on the RAC, not only for her for 8 years, but now for the Cattlemen's Association. So I've been to anything that deals with water in the last 15 years. in North County and our county. And I just wanted to introduce myself, so when we get to item 8, you'll know what I'm here for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other people that make a comment?
Some of you know me, but introduction went Greg, so. I'm on the Templeton Advisory Group, TAG, I'm the vice chair, I'm not here for TAG. I'm also on the Paso Basin Cooperative Committee, one of their subcommittees, they're called TAC committees for monitoring wells to design a basin-wide design for a number of monitoring wells, and I've been on that committee since like March. So my interest here tonight is based on your water report. So at that time, I'll be happy to make comments. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will go to the consent agenda, which have 4 items on the minutes of November 21st. On-call engineering services agreement, resolution number 24-2023, the update to personnel guidelines, and resolution number 25-2023, acceptance of City of Pismo Beach Harbor 68 per capita funding. Would any board member like to pull an item or comment?
I have a comment.
Sure.
On D, just good work to Melissa and the park committee for being known and reaching out, and we can always use extra money. This was really pleasantly to read that $177,000 fell our way. I was like, oh, that's not a little bit. So good job.
And then also please thank City of Pismo.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. It's gonna be well
And I
spent.
understand this was pretty much because of you, so.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people involved, but building connections and.
Oh, take
Thank you.
credit.
Sure.
I would like to have the minutes done separately, seeing as I was not at the November 21st meeting.
Well, I'll make a motion that the board approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2023 board meeting.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Director Logan,
Aye.
Giardini,
Yes.
Bardonish.
Aye.
Pearson.
Aye.
And Peterson.
Okay, could I get a motion to approve the 3 items?
Here, I'll make a motion to approve the consent items B, C, and D. I'll second.
Roll call.
Directors Giardini,
Yes.
Pearson,
Aye.
Bardonish.
Aye.
Logan
Aye.
and Peterson.
All right. Oh, I forgot to ask if there's any comments. I apologize for that. Anybody from the public would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll get to item 8, the business. So I'll open the public hearing on resolution number 26-2023, urban water management. Yes.
Yes, thank you much. And I'm hoping that iPhone S up there is Owen from Provost and Pritchard. Is that the case?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, yes, this item, the board may recall that late last year, December, we achieved or reached 3,000 connections to our water system. And once an agency has 3,000 connections, they are required to prepare an urban water management plan within 1 year of that occurrence. You might also recall that in February, the board awarded a consulting services agreement with Provost and Pritchard to prepare this inaugural or our first urban water management plan. And that is included in your packet. It's a rather lengthy document. It was prepared by Provost and Pritchard. We have Owen, who's here available via Zoom to answer any questions and make a couple of comments about the urban water management plan. Before he does, I wanted to just let you know, you'll see references in here that this is labeled the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And the reason it's labeled that is every now that we're in this cycle, provided we maintain 3,000 or more connections, we're gonna be required to prepare one of these every 5 years. But the second preparation of this will occur in just 2 years, 2025. And these are prepared to a state standard, a kind of a highly regulated standard. All the urban water management plans have a lot of the same sorts of review and discussion about the agency's preparedness to meet demands within its service area. So with that, I'll ask Owen to make a couple of comments about the contents or about what the report entails. And then I would suggest if you have any questions about the document itself, you could ask Owen, and then open it up for public comments, accept testimony if there are further comments or questions for Provost and Pritchard. Those can be addressed at that time, and then this can come back after the comments are concluded. You can close the public hearing and then consider adopting the resolution which would approve the plan. So Owen, we can hear you. If you could just address just briefly what's in the plan and what did you conclude?
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name's Owen Cubitt. I'm an engineer with Provost and Pritchard Consulting Group in Clovis, California. And one important thing that wasn't mentioned about these plans is that they are a requirement of the state, but they're also required if you want to be eligible for certain state grants, loans, and special drought assistance. And that's one reason a lot of agencies prepare them. But just an overview, if you look through the plan, you see there's lots of tables and lots of numbers. But in essence, what it does is it looks at water supplies, demands, and water reliability through the year 2045. It also looks at water conservation and drought planning. And the analysis shows that the district will have adequate water supplies even during droughts through the year 2045. And there's a few reasons for that. You have multiple different sources you can rely on. You've adopted this 20% buffer policy and had some successful water conservation over the years. Your water use per person has gone down quite a bit the past few years. There is a new water shortage contingency plan in there, or an updated plan to implement during water shortages. And that's primarily in case there's some sort of catastrophic interruption, such as a natural disaster, power failure, or infrastructure failure, because it's not anticipated that due to climatic conditions or drought that you would have a water shortage. So that's just a broad overview. If anybody has any questions, let me know.
So I have a question. Once this is filed with the Department of Water Resources, is there any kind of feedback that comes back regarding the filing of this report? Or is it just a filed and that's it?
So sometimes they have comments, but they have very strict guidelines and we followed them. So I don't anticipate that they'll have comments. The district has satisfied their conservation goals. So I don't think they'll have any comments. I think they'll accept it.
So no responses that it's accepted?
They will approve it.
Okay,
They'll
so they'll
approve it.
give confirmation.
Yes, they will give confirmation.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Questions? Any public comments? Welcome again.
Yes, thank you so much. Very well. I'm also on the technical advisory committee for expanded well monitoring with the county of San Luis Obispo, besides the other things that I've done. I'm gonna deal basically with chapter 6, and it talks about your water supplies and what you have available and what you don't have available. And I'm more concerned with what's not in the report than what is in the report. They're using information from a Fugro report that was done in 2013. There is a GSR report that was done in 2018. And why they didn't use a more current report, I'd like to know. Also, they make no mention of the fact that you have a prescriptive right and you also cannot take more water than 300 and roughly 9 acre feet from the Paso Basin, which your deep wells are in, because you filed prescription against landowners and your defendants in a lawsuit. And none of this information is in this report. And that should be in there because the GSAs for the Paso Basin say there's no surplus water, and you as an appropriator cannot take any more water if there's no surplus than what your prescriptive right is. And you're using more than 100 acre feet than what your prescriptive right is. And that's in violation of a court order that was signed on June 7th of 2019. So we had a 14-day trial in 2018 that laid all this information out. And so I'm looking at, on one hand, people are saying there's no problem, so we want to take what we want to take. And on the other hand, we claim there's a problem because we wanted to file prescription and we want grant money. That to me is unacceptable, especially since I'm one of the guys on the other side of the lawsuit. So I've been to the court trials 32 times and been on 10 Zoom court trials over the last 10 years. Also, with your Nacimiento water, you're not putting your Nacimiento water to beneficial use. You had 250 acre feet. You got an additional 156 acre feet for a total of 406. You have no carryover provision. You can't store any of that water in Lake Nacimiento like state water. It either used or loosed. And so every year you get the same amount of water. That should be your first water you use because you can't save it. You can save your groundwater, but you can't save this other water. And referring back to that report of 2013, we had 6 reports done from 2002 to 2018. They all say we're in the 90,000 acre range of the safe yield in the Paso Basin. It wasn't really the Paso Basin. It was what they consider the Bulletin 118 Basin, which includes Paso Basin, the Atascadero Sub-Basin, the little part in Monterey, and all of it together. That was the ultimate part. So certain parts can't be separated, but just, I know I'm running out of time here, but just so we know, and I don't know if you know this, there's been 3 repairs on the Nacimiento pipeline. 3,909 acre feet cannot be delivered because of what they did, because they're temporary repairs. So nobody can get their maximum amount of water if everybody wants it, because they haven't done the final repairs to make that happen. So in the future, in these reports, it says we're going to use X amount of Nasi water by a certain date. How can you say that when the pipe's not fixed? So we got some issues with, to me, cleaning up the report to cover some other things that are missing in the report. The rest of the report is fine. I don't have any problem with your town growing or you having water that you have, but you have, I can't remember if it's 12 wells or, so you have 3 river wells and you have 9 wells that are stated to be in the Paso part of the basin. They're not in accordance to what's going on with the Paso GSAs. And they're claiming a 2016 report that was not a report, it was a model run. And the model run is the only one that's 12,500 acre feet different than the other 6 reports that were done. And the only reason they're using that is so they can get grant money and claim that there's some kind of a problem. And to me, that's fraud, because they know we have a shallow well problem. We don't have a water problem. We have a management problem because we're not using, just for an example, Paso Robles can clean 2,688 acre feet of their Nacimiento water. Last year, they used 900. They have 6,488. Over the last 6 years, they've wasted over 30,000 acre feet of Nasi water they could have put to beneficial use. So I'm tired of people saying we don't have supplemental water and that we need to do something else to find stuff when it's available and they're not using it. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
We're welcome to take additional testimony and then we can come back to these issues, or I can try to address any issues Greg brought up to the best of my ability now.
What's the preference?
I would prefer a response now so that I don't get them all mixed up.
Okay.
I would too.
I probably, so one, my view on the status of the case probably isn't gonna match exactly, what Greg might have articulated. It is true that we were served by a group of landowners about a little over 10 years ago. This case known as the Steinbeck case, and it's, been going through the court process. One of the phases of the trial related to prescription. It was a defense that we and other water agencies pled, and we prevailed in that component of the phase back in 2019. But the trial is not yet complete. One of the areas that's kind of maybe confusing to the Department of Water Resources and pretty much everybody else on the planet, the area of the water that we draw from is known as the Atascadero Subbasin. To that court, and only that court, it's a larger area. The court did not recognize the Atascadero Subbasin, largely because the basin wasn't recognized as being independent of the Paso Robles Subbasin until 2016, and the case started 3 years prior to that. So it's very difficult to compare what's going on in the court case and the Atascadero Basin and Paso Robles independent basin management. You know, our groundwater management is independent of what happens north in Paso Robles and beyond. We have our own groundwater sustainability agency that we participate with. And we have our own groundwater sustainability plan that is submitted and awaiting comment, and there is not a deficit of water in the Atascadero Basin. And this report examines the Atascadero, the availability of water of the Atascadero Basin, or the report that Greg cited, the Fugro report from back in 2012 or 13, updated, was really an examination of a much smaller area within the Atascadero Basin, that's known as the Templeton Subunit Study. And that was really just looking at the areas where our wells are located. So it is quite difficult to examine the sources of water and the limitations of those sources in the Atascadero subunit and compare that to the larger basin. It's probably fair to say Greg and I would not agree that we're limited to pumping 300 and some acre feet of water in from the greater Paso Robles or the original Paso Robles subbasin. Our expectation is we'll be able to continue to pump about 1,040 acre feet. And that's what's cited in our water buffer model. That's what's cited in the Templeton subunit study. That's what's cited in this report. We don't pump that much water, and we haven't. But that's what's available to us. Our safe yield of that unit. Regarding the Nacimiento pipeline, yes, the statistics that Greg Raywald pointed out are accurate. We started out with a 250 acre foot I'll use the term subscription. That was increased to about 406 acre feet or 406 acre feet here maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And as you know, the limitation on our use of Nacimiento water is really because is our limitation of the amount of capacity at the Selby site and our ability to percolate that water for later retrieval. We have plans to relocate that turnout location to allow us to increase the amount of water that is made available. None of the users utilize their full subscription of Nacimiento water and ever have since the project came online. There were several breaks to the project. They are repaired. There's one break that's further downstream from us that was damaged last January that serves the city of San Luis Obispo. That is not yet repaired. But we were receiving Nacimiento water just late November. I don't know if there are any other questions or any other comments that were raised that you have questions about that I can attempt to answer.
Any questions, Lord?
So the GSI report that was done in 2018 did not look specifically at our wells because that is the more current information. We relied on the 2013 report because it was specific to our area. So the GSI report.
I'm not certain what report Greg might have been referring to, if that was something that was done for the Paso Robles Basin. You know, once the basins were separated outside of this court case, we're independent of what's happening north of the fault line. So there isn't coordination in the groundwater basin management necessarily between the Atascadero Basin and what's going on in Paso Robles. They're treated independently by the Department of Water Resources.
And his quote on the prescriptive rights was that we are allowed 300 and we're using 1,000. Do I have the numbers right?
Roughly.
And has that been decided by the court yet, or it's still in process?
So the case is still moving forward. The prescription phase of the trial did conclude and there was judgment rendered. But the prescription is not a limitation on the use of that water. That's what we were able to prove or demonstrate we had used during the periods of drought or shortage back in the 80s and 90s.
Was the 1,000?
No, it was the 300.
Number.
I don't recall the specific number, but I'm sure that's right, three something.
And his comment about using the Nasi water before we use any other water. Is there a response to that?
Well, I would say that we don't, we don't have the
Right.
ability to percolate all that
Oh,
water.
that's right.
That's a limitation, but there's no obligation. All these sources are managed independently or used in a kind of coordinated way. What you may recall is the way we use Nacimiento water now is we take it, let's say we took it in November, we took it through this season, we took it through just about a month ago. That water, because where we percolate it, we can't retrieve it for 28 to 35 months. So we cannot utilize that water in a real-time fashion. We can't open a spout and insert that water into the potable water system. So it's a very important source. It represents about 20% of our water supply. It's a key source for the district. It's not the first and only, it's not the first source that's used, and it will not be.
And I was wondering if gentleman Provost had any responses to Greg's comments.
Could you speak a little bit louder?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was wondering if the gentleman from Provost had any responses to Greg's comments too.
The consultant. If the
Yeah.
consultant has any comments.
Yeah, just one thing to note, that the report states that the district, they're assuming they have the potential to fully utilize Nacimiento water in 2027. And the numbers reflect that. That's when the facilities would be built.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments?
Be short and sweet, because Ray Wall's way ahead of me on all this history and stuff, but. So I just like to ask a couple of questions on the nasty water. So, question number one, so, the service district has a cost, an annual cost for this water, whether you use it or not, correct? And that's because we are partners in funding the pipeline. Is that correct?
Yeah, the cost components for our Nacimiento project are really two or three. We have debt service costs that we pay a share of. That's fixed whether we take it or not, use it or not. We have variable energy costs, which are billed if water is pumped to Templeton. That cost is billed based on the amount of water that we use and the cost of delivering that water. And then we have some O&M costs of operating the pipeline, and that cost is shared by the participants. So yes, there are most of the costs that we end up paying. We incur whether we accept the water or not.
Are those costs disclosed in this report? I didn't, I have to confess, I didn't study every page, so I was just, and you don't have to even, if you could provide that to me at some point after the meeting, that's fine, but.
They're included in our budget, under the water fund, which I can email you a link to.
Yeah, but do you know offhand, so what is the total cost? So if you're using the full allocation, which is 406 acres, feet a year, all of those three costs, what is the total cost per acre foot for Nasty Water?
I do not have that information with me.
But I mean, but we could calculate that from the three different,
Yes, we could
I mean,
calculate
not
the fixed
tonight.
cost. You could calculate the fixed costs. The variable costs are gonna be, they're a little more complicated because it depends on the time of day you take the water, how many other users are taking the water, because PG&E has variable rates that get higher and higher as you max out the pumping.
but I'm
So-
sure we can come up with an estimate that's
Yes,
in the ballpark, right?
yes.
So if you could do that, not tonight, but whenever. So, so how does this Nasty Water understand, based on your report, this is raw water, not treated water? So how does this Nasty Water get actually handled by the district? And when it comes out of a pipeline, where does it go? How is it treated? And then you had mentioned earlier, it was like 35 months before you think you could even somehow retrieve that water, correct?
Yeah, presently the water, or since the Nacimiento project's been online, the district's taken its Nacimiento subscription at the Selby percolation pond site, which is located south of the high school along the Salinas River. That's also where we percolate treated wastewater. It's percolated underground. It flows, it's commingled really once it gets underground with the underflow of the Salinas River and the sandy alluvial soils. And then we have two wells that are located north but downstream of that location where we retrieve the water, which is now classified as groundwater. It's chlorinated, disinfected at that location and tested, and then inserted into the system.
So you extract it from the wells and then treat it, or?
Yeah, yes, the treatment's limited, it's groundwater, we have chlorination. And there's, it's not treated beyond chlorination at that location. Because it's been through the alluvial soils, it's handled much like our river water allocation at that point.
It is treated, the river water isn't treated, or?
Well, it's chlorinated. That's
Chlorinated.
our requirement for treating that source of water. If we had like a bacteria, if it failed like a bacteria test or another primary drinking standard, then we wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
utilize
I
those.
guess, okay. So these two, you have two wells that are downstream from where this water is being deposited or put back into the ground, essentially. How deep are those wells?
They're shallow. They're in the underflow of the river. In those locations, about 50 feet.
50 feet, wow, really shallow.
Very.
Yeah. So you think you recover nasty water through there within 50 feet then?
Yeah, so we know that we're not recovering molecule for molecule, but we're recovering, if we deposit a gallon of water into the percolation ponds from either the treated wastewater or the Nacimiento water, we can recover 98% of that same gallon 28 or 35 months later. That's the estimated travel time that it takes to travel below the surface of the ground to that location.
All right, great, thank you for that. One couple quick questions, I know it's more than 3 minutes, but I noticed in the report, and I don't have it in front of me now, but you have some estimates of increased population in our district. And I think it showed 2025 to be 8,200 and some odd people. And I believe we're up over based on the 2020 census, we're actually up over 8,000 now. But maybe that's not in the district. I'm not sure how that works. So are those good numbers? And the reason I'm asking is I was at a board meeting today, all day, unfortunately. And one of their biggest issues for priority, and this is state mandated to some point, that the county between now and 2028 has to add at least 10,000 new housing units. And that brought up in mind to me some issues about, and they were talking about, you know, certain costs, but they weren't really considering what I would call off-site infrastructure costs that need to be supplied for these additional housing, and they have no numbers for this area, that's just total county. But I think this is something that you guys need to start looking at if you're not already. Because, you know, if you're gonna get a substantial increase in housing bills here between now and 2028, which isn't very far away. And what's the effect on the district's costs for providing infrastructure, water supplies, wastewater treatment, and so on this increased housing that's being mandated by the state. So I'm just putting that out there as kind of an info item for you guys if you're not really up on it yet, but I think and the county has really put this as a priority one thing now that they have to go through in the next few months. But I think you need to keep your eye on that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
What was the state mandate that relates to that 2028 housing?
I'm sorry?
What's the state mandate or legislation?
I don't know the numbers, but it was pretty clear today in the board hearing, the supervisor hearing, that this is like a first priority one. They have other priority ones, but this is like the top of the list. So it's something I think just to keep your eye on. And actually even John Pashong, you know, District 1, he even made the comment that, you know, this is interesting, but you know, up here in this area, we don't have water for a lot of this. And also Pastarola City is doing huge new housing projects, and a lot of that's coming. I mean, I guess you guys don't think you're affected by the Paso Basin. You know, that's discussion item for a later date, but in any event, they are putting in some massive new housing projects that are now going to be using Paso Basin water. Now, if you don't believe that Paso Basin affects the Atascadero Basin, then no problem. But you know, I'm not sure I'm totally on board with that. So, but in any event, I think it's just things to start looking at in this area as to what's going on.
So I had asked the general manager because there was my recollection that we have seen something from the county in the past regarding housing, because I know that the county is mandated to do that in order to receive state revenue, which is why they're really kind of forced to do that housing development.
Yeah, you might have been referring to the housing element, which is a component of the general plan that's done countywide, but oftentimes more frequently than the overall general plan is updated.
Yeah.
I want to say it's been about 4 years, maybe it's been less than that, 3 years, not too terribly long ago, that an updated housing element was prepared countywide, and it was a cooperative effort between the incorporated cities and the county for this county.
Yeah, but now they're going back and they're now going to be reviewing and advising the housing element. And secondly, based on the comment, and I'm not that familiar with it, but based on the discussion with the board today, the concern wasn't not having enough housing to get the revenue. It was concern about being penalized for not doing what the mandate is requiring for us. And I'm not, you know, I don't know how much that affects your district, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up that you should look at today's video of that Board of Supervisor meeting, item 14, which is about other things, but it was also about this issue, and that was the major issue that was coming up on that item. So something to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we do have our water buffer, water policy, water buffer policy that takes into account all the growth that we're expecting and you know, what things are gonna look like down the road. And, you know, that's why we have the buffer. So if the county comes and we puts requirements on us that we don't have the water, I mean, can we refer back to our water policy and say this is all the water we have, and then, so how does that work?
Well, I'm not sure it pertains to the urban water management plan, but this policy or this document essentially looks at our published available water supply, our projected growth, and you're correct that our water buffer policy includes or allocates water to those unconnected units or zero use meters or virtual meters. Those are parcels that already have water assigned to them for development. So it's already in the forecast. So if there were a policy shift, I'm not sure there could be one at the county level, but I think more than likely you'd get pressure to approve additional, like say, will serve requests. Right now, we issue a will serve letter only when the property owner has secured, water for that parcel before they can begin the development process.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm asking is because of, you mentioned the population estimates that are in this report, so.
Yeah, maybe Owen could address that, where the population estimates came from. I do want to just point out that the district's water system is not equal to the district's boundaries. Our water system extends beyond the district boundaries. So the area like Clausen Ranch, on the northwest side of the district, that's not within the district's boundaries, but it is part of the district's water system. There's not really that's not a densely populated area, but there are, obviously people living out there in connections that occur out there outside the district boundaries.
The other thing that perhaps Mr. Murray had asked questions about was on our new development, we have impact fees that are collected at the time of new development. Those impact fees are supposed to be an offset to the development cost, or the developer is required to put in infrastructure in order to have the houses built or commercial buildings built or the street built. And so we do collect fees to help offset future growth.
Yeah, my point isn't about collecting fees, it's about the water supply. That's my point. That's what's the impact on the water and wastewater treatment systems? That's my point. It's not about the fees. So.
Well, I think if the county is looking at having a housing objective, we need to kind of make sure that, because we're one of those spokes in the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to make sure that we're connected on that. So I agree with you raising this issue.
Yeah. May I say one last thing? And I don't know how many people drive down Alpamar from the river back, let's say past Finley's and up the road just a little way to the end. You got thousands of acres of grapes going in that are pumping out of the same basin. And those reports I referenced from Seoul don't account for that water that comes out of the same basin that everybody's talking about, whether it's not part of the Paso Basin, it's in the Atascadero Formation, or whether it's in the Paso Formation. The bottom line is there's a safe yield for each basin, and you're maxed out. You're not maxed out on the reports because they're using old reports, but you are maxed out when you add in the new stuff that's been going on for the last 10 years since 2013, when that report was done. And that needs to be taken into consideration when you're using old material. And those other materials that were used that I referenced, I have the court order on the amount of water, and the court agreed that the 2018 report that was done for the whole basin was the accurate report. And so any documentation, I have every report that's been done on this basin, both the Atascadero, the Paso as a whole, the whole thing as a whole, the Salinas River, both reservoirs, both dams, the state water and the sewer water. And I've studied it for the last 15 years. I'm well abreast of all the little parts, and everybody wants to claim that their part isn't part of the part, but it is all interconnected. So thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Yeah, was trying to find that.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that, we'll adopt resolution number 26 2023, adopting the 2020 urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan. And find that the project is exempt from SIGWA pursuant to government code section 6066.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call.
Directors Hardonish.
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Gardini,
Aye.
Pearson. Aye. And Peterson.
Yes. Okay, our next item is another public hearing, the community projects funding request fire engine. So I will then open the public hearing.
And Chief Peterson can introduce this item.
Thank you so much.
You're up, chief.
Good evening, and this is just a notice of hearing, the USDA to be able to allow the public to speak on any objections to the funding for USDA
Thank you.
to appropriate a new fire engine. That's the short, sweet synopsis of it, and available for any questions.
Questions for the chief? Any public comments? This is a public hearing, so. Seeing none, do we have any on the Zoom? Seeing none, so can I get a motion on this?
This is no action.
No action needed.
Yes or no? Public hearing.
Yeah, but the purpose of the public hearing is to accept any testimony.
Yeah.
No action needed. Sorry about that. All right. The next item, C, request for water, a fee or for water usage.
Yes, I can address this item for you. We received a request in last month from a property owner at 221 North Main Street to have the district board authorize the waiver or the non-collection or non-billing for water that was used at a water meter on that property. I'm happy to go into as much detail as you'd like. It's kind of a complicated case where the property used to be, what was a developed piece of property. It was the frontage on Main Street for the Templeton Livestock Yard. The physical piece of property, the location where the meter is, was kind of right in front of the old Hoover's Beef Palace of that was removed as a part of the redevelopment of that site when the Templeton Ranch development was put in here about 7 or 8 years ago. At that time, the Templeton Ranch development had a requirement to have irrigated plants along a reconfigured section of Toad Creek. You can see that on an aerial photograph that we included with the board packet. There was a requirement that irrigation be in existence for 5 years. Sometime in that 5-year window, the property actually changed hands a couple of times. The property where the meter is or was changed hands a couple of times. It went from Community Coast Builders to Sphere Partners, and then Sphere Partners to the Carrolls, who bought the property about, or I think almost 4 years ago. But during this window of time, the water meter, the account for that water meter was in the name of
CCB.
yeah, it's really MI Creekside, but known as Community Coast Builders was paying the bill. Was in the name of MI Creekside. Just a few months ago, MI Creekside had some communication with the district about the water bill and wanting to get it out of their name as they no longer had a requirement to maintain that irrigation. Ultimately, in early October, the water was taken out of MI Creekside's name and put in the name of occupant. We were awaiting a water application for the Carrolls, who at that point now own the property. By October 23rd, it was realized there was a sizable leak. A lot of water had flown through the meter from October 6th to October 23rd. Had about $2,400 worth of water usage during that 2.5 week or so period. So it was a sizable leak. the Carrolls have disagreed initially with the assessment of those charges, for a number of reasons. And I'm happy to address them if you have questions, but ultimately, in reviewing this sort of transaction log or history, after the fact, it occurred to me as I reviewed the email correspondence and notes on the file that the prior account holder, not the property owner, but the prior account holder in my Creekside had made inquiries and requests that a service, that the meter be checked for a leak. At least on October 6th and likely on October 21st, I'm sorry, sometime between October 21st and October 6th, and probably on both dates. And for a couple of reasons, the district, or a couple of not good reasons, the district didn't provide that service order. If the service order were provided and the meter were checked, it's my belief that the meter would have been shut off due to the finding of a leak, and the water would not have continued to flow. The challenge in this whole case is the property owner may not have been aware that the water meter was in use at the time. And we attempted to bill the property owner for the water use because we rely extensively on a provision in the district's water code that says basically the property owner's responsible for charges, whether they are the ones who incurred them or not. And this is a critical and important and unique attribute with our water code, and this is really why we don't have uncollected bills in general. It's just such a small issue in Templeton, is because we collect from the property owner. If you own a house and you rent it out and there's a requirement for the tenant to put the water in their name, if the tenant doesn't pay the bill, we bill the property owner, and we don't establish service in a new party's name until that bill is paid, and we're able to obtain data with the utilization of that particular code section. So I probably covered, sort of skimmed over some of these details. Property owner may have some comments they'd like to make. I've outlined a couple of options for you. I think this is an unusual case. The circumstances are unique. And situation warrants some consideration on your part as to whether or not you're interested in waiving the water use charges, not the overall water bill, but the water use component of the water bill.
And may I comment? On the property owner.
Any comment from the board?
So I just wanted to make sure I fully understand kind of the sequence of events, because there's a lot going on in here. So allegedly the prior property owner came in on September 21st and said there was a leak, but there's no documentation that was done. So it was just verbal, that person's asserting it verbally. Subsequent to that, there were a couple of phone calls made to the district saying that there was water in the gutters. We went out, we checked, and we couldn't find any leaks. But then there was a second phone call, and then we went out again and we found the leak. And at that point, shut it off. What was the date of when it was shut off?
October 23rd.
October 23rd. So,
there is written correspondence between the district and the account, I'll use the term account holder, the MI Creekside representative, on October 6th and prior, requesting or inquiring about was the meter checked for a leak.
okay, so between October 6th and October 23rd, is that where we're now incurring this $2,000 plus
Yes.
in water bills?
Yes.
And so in some ways, we failed to address the issue.
We didn't check for a water leak on October 6th or previously.
Okay, that answers my question.
But based on the inquiry from that account holder.
Mhm.
Any other comments?
Well, I guess I have a question. So the water leak, was the meter itself leaking, or was the
No.
leak down?
Yeah, it's one of the issues that complicates this a little bit is, so 10 years ago, this is one really large parcel with one meter that served lots of uses on that particular parcel. And when this development went in, all the homes got individual water meters, but this one meter that's out by on Main Street was plumbed into for the irrigation system that ran in this this canal or Toad Creek, but it looks like a canal. It's shaped like a canal. And so it actually, the water served a kind of a large area that canal. Let me see if I can maybe describe it better by looking at that photograph. The aerial photograph shows the canal runs perpendicular. It starts out parallel to Main Street, then runs directly east towards the river. That is where the irrigation system came from, and the meters over here, closer to Creekside Ranch Road along Main Street. So that's where it fed. The leak was not near the meter; it was in the irrigation system closer to the homes, several hundred yards away.
So that being said, so even though MI Creekside said that it was reported, it's still, I mean, it's still their responsibility. It's not the district's responsibility to evaluate any kind of leakage beyond the meter. So it would have been, so you're right, it would have been nice if we had gone and shut the water off, but it's not district's responsibility, it's MI Creekside's responsibility. Is that what it is in our code?
Clearly, so the service we would have provided was to check. We do leak checks not infrequently. So when someone says, I think I might have a leak, and you send someone out to check, really the examination is to look and see if the meter's spinning at a constant rate.
Yes.
Is it going, and there'd be some inquiry, okay, is it getting water on in the house?
Yes.
So on. So if it's determined that there's a leak, then there's further inquiry. Sometimes a property owner, we tell them you need to hire a plumber to find the leak.
Yeah.
It's their responsibility to fix the leak or make that repair. In this case, since we're not talking about an occupied parcel, this water doesn't go to a house, it's irrigation only. And ultimately what happened was when we shut on October 23rd, when it was determined that there was a leak, we shut off a valve at the backflow device and essentially stopped the water from flowing. There was no repair of the leak. My assumption is if someone tries to use that irrigation system again, something's leaking, right? There's a problem with the plumbing somewhere behind the meter.
Yeah.
On private property. So our service would be limited to just determining whether there was a leak and either shutting the water off or not. In this case, the water was shut off when the leak was determined to exist on October 23rd.
But still, I mean, I've been in this situation, not in Templeton, but in St. Louis, and there was water leaking through the meter. The house wasn't leaking or anything like that, and it was my responsibility to find where the leak is, get the leak detector, and it was so. I mean, and there was,
Beyond the meter.
yeah, it was, yeah, and so I mean, even in that case, it wasn't, St. Louis didn't take any responsibility. It was because they said once it passes the meter, it becomes.
I think that's where, and that's the situation every time, even in Templeton. So if somebody comes out and says, I think I have a leak, then we'll either confirm that we'll send a utility operator out, confirm whether there's a leak or not. If the house is occupied, they need to have water service, then we say you need to hire a plumber to find the leak and correct it. In this case, since it's irrigation only account, it's not essential to have the water on. And by that point, by the 23rd, certainly that account holder no longer, MI Creekside was not on the account any longer. They didn't want to maintain that service. So the issue, I think what makes this unusual is there was a request to check the meter for a leak. We did not. We failed to provide we failed to have a service order generated to go check the leak. And I'm talking about by October 23rd. I'm sorry, October 6th. There were a couple of instances later in the month when we had bystanders or neighbors calling about, I think there's a leak somewhere around here, there's water in the gutter. That ultimately led to that meter, not meter, but the service being shut off at the backflow prevention device. So that's what makes this, I think, a unique situation, is that we have a documented request to check for a leak that we did not do by October 6th.
Any other comments from the board? Public comment?
Yeah, and I own the property, and my issue is that the water meter that was in question was in the account of somebody else, most builders, for years. I was not aware that we even had a water meter. And then somewhere around October 6th, it could have been any date that I was not aware, the district put it in my name. But they continued to let the water flow. It flowed until the 23rd or 4th when Jeff called me and said we owe a bunch of money. If I had known earlier, we have no irrigation on our property. All of this water goes someplace else. But if I had known I have responsibility for a meter, I would have turned it off. I know how to do that. But I was not aware of it till 3 weeks later.
Mr. Carroll, there is, in the write-up that was provided to us, which I'm assuming you shared this with Mr. Carroll
I did,
as well. On July 7th of 2022, there was an intent to serve letter was issued by the district to you for the proposed development at 2021 North Main Street, the property in question. And a condition of service to the existing service was removed and replaced with a smaller service to serve the proposed building on Lot 2. Later in July of 2022, there was correspondence regarding the plans to change out the existing meter with the new meter for irrigation, but yet you're saying you weren't aware there was water.
No, all of that I'm not aware of, all of what you're discussing. It may have been handled by one of our engineers that's been trying to get a building permit for the property. I'm just not aware of that.
Well, it says it was issued by the district to you.
Yes, we have well-served letters from the district.
Okay.
And I know also that the previous client told the district that they no longer need the water, they no longer want the water, and they don't need the meter. And the district didn't do anything about that, and I'm not trying to be critical of that, but that would have been a good time to turn the meter off.
Well, there was communication also on October 9th of this year with our former engineer Tina Mayer, explaining that the water units need to remain connected to avoid the impact fees or the water capacity fees. So do you recall that communication?
Yeah, I spoke to Tina, we had a long conversation, she explained how we could set up a situation where we don't need, we can remove the meter, which I think we might have done by now. And then another fee structure. That would have been a really good time for Tina to tell me that I'm paying for water that's running through the meter. She didn't tell me that. She didn't tell me I had responsibility for the meter at that time. All I knew is I was working out a deal to remove the meter.
Is the meter required anymore? Was this an irrigation meter required from the CUP to supply irrigation for 5 years to establish plants? And now that the plants are established, it's no longer needed? I'm getting.
I think, yeah, that's correct. That's my understanding.
So this water meter will be then taken back into our system?
No, the water, the complexity here is that this was all part of a larger parcel, and the developer at the time, there's not development right now on the piece, this 221 Main Street location. The meters physically at that location, the developer chose to utilize the water that's assigned to that parcel to meet this temporary 5-year irrigation demands. And so it stays with the parcel. The physical meter was removed at the property owner's request just a few weeks ago. I will say that the challenging was probably 2 issues that the property owner is dissatisfied with here. One is when the meter came out of when the water meter account or the water account came out of MI Creekside's name, placed in their name, they were not contacted. They were not contacted for 3 days, and 3 days on October 6th, that occurred, and October 9th is when the district engineer made contact with the Carrolls. And the complexity,
Didn't tell me anything about us being responsible for the water usage at that date.
yeah, I think the second and the more perplexing or complicating factor is during this time, we did not know, we don't have real-time water meter data, right? We read the meters once a month. What happens during the course of that month? We don't have real-time monitoring of water meters. So when the account was taken out of one party's name and put into another, the meter wasn't shut off, and it almost never is. We have accounts that change names with them regularly, daily, or more. When a tenant moves out, a new tenant moves in, we don't turn the water off. We get a meter reading for the purposes of generating a bill, and water use stays active and goes to the next person's name. That's how this was handled, like a routine transaction from MI Creekside, which was treated like as a tenant to the property owner.
What with the occupant?
Which occupant,
with
but
the
to bill the property owner. At the time, we did not have an application for water service from the property owners. Our records still indicate, our billing records still indicated that Sphere Partners, who was I think the property owner that the Carrolls bought it from, was the landlord in the utility billing system. Of course, that we know now, ceased to exist back about 3.5 or 4 years ago, sometime in early 2000. I'm sorry, sometime early 2020. So there's again 2 issues. If there wasn't continuous or a leak, I don't think we'd have this dispute, because there wouldn't be water, $2,400 worth of water that went through the meter in this time period. At the time, I originally just talked to the Carrolls. I didn't know about the request for the service order from MI Creekside that we just didn't provide. So now, after really reviewing this carefully, going through the entire transactional history here, I think that there was a district error that occurred where there was a request to check for a leak. That check was not performed. That it still would have been, it's still the property, if that request had not come in, absolutely, I don't think we would have responsibility for this or any component of this payment. The property owner would have been responsible. The code is crystal clear on that aspect. But we had a request to check for a service order that's documented. We did not provide a service. We did not perform a service order. And so therefore we were unaware of the leak until several weeks went by, or a couple weeks went by. And during that couple week period, the meter, a lot of water went to the meter, $2,400 worth.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Any other
Under discussion.
public comment? Okay,
Well, I'm gonna state that, I'll make a motion to authorize credit to the account for the water usage charged in the amount of $2,287.32. Since TCSD was negligent in sending out, someone to read the meters, and, the, client, incurred, damages that could have been avoided.
I'll second the motion.
roll call.
Director Stardini,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Bardonish. Pearson
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, the next item on our agenda is resolution number 27-2023, revision to strategic financial policies.
Okay, the board may recall that in June, there was a request from the board that the Admin and Finance Committee review the property tax allocation in light of the adjustments that the administrative allocation made to the various departments of the district. The Finance and Administration Committee met and discussed this topic on 2 occasions. Once in August and once about a month ago in early November. They were provided background information on property tax allocation, like a 30-year history of that allocation, and came to a consensus at the August meeting that the allocation should remain as it more or less has been going forward to the extent possible, and asked that a policy statement be developed to be considered further by the committee and then advanced to the board. At that same meeting in August, there was a discussion on this little sort of related note, dealing with community facilities districts allocation. And you may recall that we formed a CFD in 2017, and the monies that were collected in the first several years were very small, minimal. As a matter of fact, for some of those years, our costs were higher than the amount that we collected. Now we are in a position to be collecting more sizable sums, still relatively modest, but haven't allocated or haven't programmed any of those funds for specific use. In the August committee meeting, the committee recommended that the first $80,000 annually of CFD funds, which is about what we expect to collect this year, like a little less than that actually, should be set aside and programmed or planned to be used as the asset replacement contribution for a new fire engine. We've known for a long time that's going to be a big hurdle, a new cost to be incurred, and for a number of reasons, the committee thought that was a good kind of policy statement to bring forward. The staff brought to the committee draft policy language on both of these areas, both the property tax allocation and the community facilities district allocation, to the, I believe it was November 2nd committee meeting. At that time, the committee discussed the draft language, made some pretty minor amendments to the language, and recommended that it move forward to the board of directors and be codified in the strategic financial policies. The items before you tonight are a resolution which would adopt, if approved, would adopt amendments to the strategic financial policy, and the strategic financial policy, the draft that's in your packet on page 5 and 6 includes the policy language that is also the same policy language that's in the staff report. I do want to point out that you're free to adopt it as presented, in which case the resolution and the policy would be approved as is, make changes to it, or simply approve one or the other of the policies. In those cases, we would need to, I would need to make just some very minor, if there's some change, if you're gonna approve just one of the two, I want to make sure we edited the resolution to reflect that. And then, of course, if there are any changes, ensure that there's clarity on what changes are desired. You can make those changes directly in the draft policies that are before you, and then those can be considered. Happy to answer any questions on this item. And there was a request at the last board meeting that we have representatives from both fire and Parks and Recreation here tonight when this item came up for discussion, and they are here.
Questions?
I'd like to hear comments from both fire and park before I make comments. But that's just me.
You what?
I would like to hear comments from both fire and park representatives first before I make comments.
On the property tax allocation?
If they have comments.
Melissa?
I like the split. Thank you. We should maintain it. We have for years.
So my question is, oh, I'm sorry, Chief Peterson.
Well, I know this has been a bone of contention for the board for, bone of contention is probably a wrong way to put it, for years, this property tax. But if that's what we're truly talking about, or are we kind of meshing the CFDs and the property tax?
So they're two separate policies. And it's
So-
really just to kind of, in my mind, is kind of codify what we have today and to provide some history. So if any of us are gone, someone else can say, well, how did we come up with this property tax allocation? What was the purpose behind it? And the same with the CFD. So there is a statement in here that says, at some point in time, there's 0.75% of the existing allocation that's gonna have to be adjusted at some point in time to kind of cover some of the funds that we know are short, like the drainage fund. But I see that as something that takes place or should take place at budget. Well, I was answering his comment about what he was asking.
I mean, he just, yeah, I mean, I would just appreciate to hear from him.
Yeah, I want to hear from him
Thank
too.
you.
I'm just providing some answers for him.
So I guess I would just, state that, again, property tax has been one of those things back in the early nineties, that was brought up many a times, with this board with regards to the viability of the fire department. I'm not going to try and pit fire against Parks and Rec. My kids went through Parks and Rec. I want to keep our Parks and Rec viable. But at the same time, I think it's up to this board to be able to prioritize the importance of what the district needs with the monies that it has. And those priorities have to be set. In my opinion, obviously it's going to be public safety. I'm sure in Melissa's opinion, it would be Parks and Rec. But at a emergency level standard, through COVID, we didn't have Parks and Rec. Fire department continued to operate. So it's one of those things where I think it's up to the board to be able to set the priorities on where that funding goes and what that allocation is. If you want to bring that back to staff and have staff work it out or whatever, then we'll do that. But it's been presented by the general manager to the board. I think it's up to the board now to make decisions based on the lack of funding that the fire department has. And try and make determinations whether we're going to be able to be viable. And, if we don't relook at this financial policy or the study within the next few years to see how valid it is, whether we're going to be economically viable in 10 years is what that keeps pointing. So I guess my question to the board is, where is that additional money going to come from to continue the staffing, to continue the asset replacement, and to continue the salaries that need to take place to keep the fire department viable? 77% of the community voted for Measure A. I think that's a significant amount of, backing that people want for the fire department. I'm not, again, pitting that against rec because I want Parks and Rec. My kids went through it. My grandkids are about to go through it. But it's one of those situations where I think it's important for the board to figure out, what the viability is for those two departments, particularly the health and safety aspect or public safety aspect of the fire department. I won't get too much more in detail than that, but I'll leave it at that.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
In real numbers, what's 0.75%? 100,000, 5,000, 2,000?
Yeah.
It's 15,000.
Yeah, about $10,000.
Yeah, about $10,000.
10,000.
Okay, so is $10,000 going to miraculously save the fire department or the Park and Recs department?
Every dollar counts. It's not that significant.
Right. So if the $10,000 was how can I say this? Okay, I have to ask a question first, because my understanding is when you set a policy, if the policy is unclear, you go back to the intent of the policy, the hearing, that's discussions on the policy. So this property tax allocation came from our finance and admin committee, correct?
Yes, the policy language you're looking at was recommended by that committee to the board.
Okay, when I listened to that meeting, There are several comments in that meeting that even though this policy is written, I don't even want to use the word vague, I want to say, but, it's written vague, it's another word for vague. It's written to avoid any kind of determination purposely. So then, when the future board comes to look at the property tax allocation and say, what the heck did they mean? They're gonna go back to the fire committee meetings. And at that meeting, it's pretty strongly stated that it would go to fire department. And I think that a decision like that should be discussed amongst all board members, because to me, it looks like it's couched in these words here. And is not, that what is stated here does not reflect what went on in that meeting. And so I would make a motion saying that we keep it as it is, and that when we reach a deficit, that deficit is split between the two departments, if you want to get that specific. Or that this board was unable to determine where those funds come from at this time per this meeting, and that the finance and admin meetings minutes do not reflect this board's intentions. But I'm not happy with the wording of this, because I feel like it's, I know from a law perspective, it goes back to that finance and admin committee meeting. And the minutes from that are not reflected in this proposed property tax allocation, is my feeling and my opinion. And if we have to decide exactly where this money goes, then I think it needs more investigation than this.
I wanna make sure I'm clear before that when you say when the deficit occurs, when the split occurs, we're talking about the policy language that I wrote originally, is dealing with when that approximately $10,000 of the $1.5 million a year needs to go to either the streetlight fund or the storm drain fund. It's my interpretation is that at that, when that occurs, when that point in time occurs, the board will need to decide who takes a haircut to make that possible, which current fund that benefits from property taxes takes the haircut to make that possible. That's how I read, that's how it was intended when I wrote it. Anyways.
I understand that was your intention, but your intention is not what took place at that meeting. And so if we approve this the way it stands, I want to make sure it's reflected per your intention stated here tonight. The other thing is that why are we writing something now when that split has been historic? And if the board in 10 years or 5 years or 4 years or 2 years has to make a change, why are we worrying about this now?
Oh, okay,
it's
so-
a stupid question because we directed you as a board to do this.
Well, no, I think the issue is it's included this highlight of the small challenges that we have with storm drain fund and streetlight fund. The reason that's highlighted is because I think if the board were to adopt a policy that didn't have this second paragraph in it, you would be you'd be stating that this is our intent going forward, but yet you would know that you couldn't maintain that in perpetuity.
Okay.
Right, so that's the reason why that second paragraph exists.
Oh, I see, okay.
That's why, it's just a call attention to it, so that at some point, 4, 5, 6, I don't know when exactly, there needs to be a change to this allocation. There could be a change for other reasons as well, but for the reasons, the storm drain and streetlight reasons, you and future board members would have known that this was something we anticipated. We didn't know where it was going to come from at that moment in time, but we knew it was coming. That's why it's highlighted. You could, if you wanna make sure it's clear that the board needs to make that, would have to make that decision when that shift takes place, then we could figure out a way to put that language in here. And I don't think that would change the intent or the meaning behind the policy language. But we could clarify it, that at some point in time that would have to happen. Now, just keep in mind, this is still, this policy can be changed by this board or a future board at any time, just by passing a new resolution updating the policy. So this isn't set in stone, but it was presented as from the committee as the policy moving forward.
Go ahead, I'd like to hear you.
And I'd just like to comment,
Dr. Fardnish.
so having attended that finance meeting, we intentionally did not want to address the second paragraph by saying, where would that 0.75% come from? So it acknowledges that it exists, but we did not want to make that determination at this point in time. And primarily because that becomes something that's done, I would say, during the budget process. So if that adds any more clarity.
That's contrary to what was stated in the meeting.
I disagree. I disagree.
I mean, if it's a policy though, it would be talked about before the budget meetings, right? Because we have to have the policy in order to establish the budget. So this is what needs to be ironed out right now. I mean, I guess, so it's operating at a deficit now, and then we anticipate at some point it's gonna need to be increased at 0.75%. Is that?
Yeah, both the streetlight fund and the storm drain fund are operating at deficits, but both funds have a fund balance that can keep them afloat for a period of time.
Is there anything preventing kind of a two-tier approach to the property tax allocation where the first step would be to fund the streetlights and is it the waste? Storm drains to meet those requirements, and then the second tier will be divided in the percentages allocated to both the fire and the park, so that nobody's necessarily getting a haircut. It's being taken off the top, and then the remaining amount will be divided as it's traditionally been allocated.
No, that could be done. I think the bottom line, the money maybe won't look like a haircut, but it still is the same impact to those funds, right?
Understandably, but visually and, to the community and to the departments, nobody's taking the direct hit. It's not, we're gonna come back here and be like, all right, now we have to do the 0.75%. Who's gonna take the hit? It's the property tax allocation will be absorbed in that manner, and then the remaining amounts will be allocated to the departments in the same amount percentages as they.
Yeah, I think it could be restructured that way.
That sounds really reasonable, because I agree with that, in that then to the community, it sounds like neither department is taking a hit. They're being funded up front off of the property tax allocation, and then the same ratio is kept with the remaining monies. So I would support.
Because theoretically, the property tax allocation has increased year after year. Is that correct, the amount?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
Okay, so I mean, I don't like to be in this position where we're trying to pick one department over another, and I don't think it's fair to prioritize, say, public safety is more important than recreation, because arguably recreation also contributes to public safety. And and during COVID, not to argue here, but there were services by the recreation department. My kids participated in those services, so the recreation is valuable, and it's really important to the community. And this divide of public safety versus recreation, to me, one is proactive, one is reactive, and they kind of work together. And so it just would make more sense to try to preserve both departments as much as we can.
Well, for somebody who doesn't use Park and Rec at my age, I'm more concerned about having fire respond, if you want to look at the priority. Because I tend to agree with, at some point, we're gonna have some tough decisions. Because I think neither one are gonna get sufficiently funded through the tax.
But we have to look at the community as a whole and what is the majority of the population here. There are younger families, there are more children here, there are more people using our services, both services. And both have been very well involved in our communities. And I don't think it's fair to say just because I'm not using it or my family's not using it, it's not gonna benefit the community. You know, we're here as a representative body, we're not here for individual reasons.
I agree.
So-
But I think we're still gonna come down with some tough decisions.
That's fine, and I think we should cross those when we get there, but for now, we are presented with this policy. I'm proposing something a little bit more neutral than at somewhere down the road, somebody's gonna have to decide whether to take away from fire or from parks, so we all know what the majority suggestion is going to be based on that finance meeting. And the way that second paragraph is worded, is very vague and kind of ambiguous. I don't really fully understand what it's trying to say, so I would just propose the two-tier approach that I explained.
And drainage is funded by the individuals that receive that benefit, correct?
Yes, it's operated as an enterprise fund. So it's a billed amount to the parcel.
Which has not been changed.
Yeah, there's some real, as we explained in the committee meeting, some challenges under Prop 218 in terms of how rates can be set and established. And again, it's possible that the drainage fund, there will be another solution short of property taxes. But for this purpose, because I thought it was most important to highlight that there might need to be monies coming out of property taxes to cover it. If you were unable to adjust those rates, then my expectation is property tax allocation would need to have a minor shift to.
And
keep
those
the drainage
rates for the drainage funds, those rates have not been changed in how long?
decades.
Decades? And they're not adjusted for any inflationary.
Correct.
So because of that, it's really impacting other areas.
Well, not yet.
Not
right?
yet, but it will.
Well, again, to a very, you know, we're discussing the impacts of this roughly $10,000 between the two. Today's
To
budget.
change the
And
drainage
So
funds.
this is part of, I guess, my confusion too, because there was direction for the finance committee to also look at alternative means of fundings and opportunities. And here we're talking about a drainage fee that could be explored, increased, adjusted, or whatever it needs. Why is that not being
It
discussed
was.
and why wasn't
It
it
was.
being presented?
It was
When?
at the finance committee.
It was not, I
It
listened to the
218.
whole meeting.
No?
When was it?
Well,
It was discussed at the August meeting.
Okay, well, that was before the new direction of this board to look at different.
Well, we can't adjust it because of Prop 218.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay.
But I would have to say, as we're representing the community, there's a huge support for this community, for the fire department. They passed Measure A. We have huge support from this community for our rec department, who holds amazing fundraisers that puts amazing amounts of money in. We serve an amazing population. So both are integral to this community, and they should not be pitted against each other. They've always worked, you know, in cohesion with each other, recognize that each department is valuable. And so I think I like Director Pearson's approach of saying, you know, in this second paragraph, that the deficit should be taken off the top of the tax monies coming in, and then the remainder would be split as it is currently now. And so, you know, neither department would actually realize much of a loss at all. And it would keep both sides of the community happy. I think most people support park and recs and fire. They don't have a preference for one or the other. They like having both. Some people might be more fire, some more park. I think that's a really good solution for the second paragraph wording compared to what was presented.
And I mean, that's with the understanding that the CFD funds are going to be allocated as recommended here to the fire department, hitting the initial 80,000. You know, I don't have any objections to that proposed language either.
Yeah, I don't have an objection to set part 2 either. So the 80,000 going to fire would stay. But that's under the CFD fund, not the property tax allocation.
some comments, please? Thank you. I just want to thank the staff for being here. I appreciate it. Your input is essential at least in decisions that we make. So I want to hear from both. And I just want to start by saying that both departments are important to me, and in no way I want to cut anything, give anyone haircuts, nothing. I've been in the Parks Committee meeting for years, and Melissa, every time you come ask for things, it's like, let's do it. You know, just recently, parks were in bad shape. Let's hire people. Let's do it. I've no thought about what, is, how much it will cost. Just let's do it. So to me, it's important. Same thing with fire. I mean, when Measure A we were going through Measure A process. Let's figure out we're gonna save our fire department. There was talk with CAL FIRE and things like that. It's like, no, we wanna have our local fire department. So we wanna take care of it. And Melissa, you've done a great, amazing job with our Parks and Rec department. One thing that should have been discussed that wasn't as much, there was you prepared a report for us, a couple of years ago for Parks and Rec where it split the facilities versus the programs. We only use, like at that time, $77,000 of all the funding that comes to Parks and Rec. Only $77,000 goes to the programs. The rest, which is like it was at the time, $270,000 goes for facilities. And that's because Melissa does an awesome job. She knows her numbers, she knows her sports, she knows what numbers come in, how much money, and it works. She has it down. So looking at property allocations and things like that, it's nothing to do with cutting back sports. I wanna increase them because we already know that you're at maximum with soccer. Not this past year, the year before, you were maxed out. You couldn't because you didn't have the staff. You can't run 10 different places. So as soon as you came up with the idea with the robot, it's like, let's do it. If that's gonna help you, let's do it. So I'm not thinking at all, I don't wanna pin fire against Park because I think there is money. There's money that we could sit down and this is where the staff needs to sit down and talk. Where is the money? Where can we help each other to come up with this? And the whole reason, I don't understand this, why are we even talking about 0.75% right now? $10,000, we are wasted. 2 meetings at Finance Committee and we are wasting here. This whole thing, it says at the June 20th, 23 board meeting, the board of directors requested that Administrative and Finance Committee review the property tax allocation and bring any recommended changes to the board. This is not totally accurate. At that meeting, I went back and I listened June 20th. I made the motion. I asked to review the property tax allocation and to come back with solutions to reduce the money that we were taking from the fire department, giving the allocated to administration. It was very specific to come back with solution to at least partially offset that cost. Then when I listened to the minutes, watched the video, there was no discussion of that. I was shocked. The staff did a great job. They presented the parks breakdown of facilities, the cost, the parks, the waste management, the franchise fees, as well as the program. So the staff showed that, as well as another item that they showed down the breakdown over the years of what the property tax allocation has been. But all of a sudden, without any discussion, without looking in depth, discussing, let's look at ideas. Where are we gonna get revenue from? How are we gonna look at these numbers? It was just said, I don't wanna change anything. We're just gonna leave this as is. It's like, oh, what? That was the whole point. That's what the direction of the board was, to go ahead and look at this and come back to come back with idea how to offset the cost that we're taking, I believe, $120,000. $140,000, that was the discussion that night. And we're talking $10,000?
So
I
you're
don't know what
talking
to
about
say.
the administrative fee.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I don't know what to say, I don't even know where I mean, I'm not going to accept, discuss anything, I mean, I look at the CFD. Community Facility District Funding Allocation, now that's a policy to me. That's a guideline, we know. You know, years down the road, we know how we're gonna present this, how are we gonna do this, but why can't we come up with another solution like this? So that way, we're not taking $120,000 from or $140,000 from fire department, and then we're all saying, oh, well, nobody's saying where's that money coming from, we all know that model is not gonna work.
So if I'm understanding you, maybe what we are looking at tonight is adopting to the Community Facilities District funding allocation, but sending the property tax allocation back to a committee or several committees along with the admin fee to discuss and bring something forward because it wasn't addressed properly. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, it was not, it was
was
not
not
to my
addressed
side,
at all.
yeah, I mean, I really don't care at this point about the 0.75%, I mean, it's just, it's silly for us to be discussing this, I mean, I'm sure the poor
The
fire,
bigger
the
issue-
fire.
the bigger issue
Yeah,
is
the
the
fire
admin fee.
department must be sitting here, what are they talking about? I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, we have the waste, the franchise fee, that probably goes up by itself, $10,000 a year. I mean, those things need to be discussed. I mean, this is not putting anybody against anybody. It just needs to be discussed. When we approved the franchise fee 2 years ago, it was $160,000. And at that time, as a board, we agreed this will take care of Parks and Rec. I mean, it would be fine. Well, now we budgeted $230,000, so it's $60,000 additional money. Well, I like to see accountability. I mean, if 2 years ago, everything was gonna be fine, why does Park need another $60,000? If we are, I mean, to me, I don't even know why we have these breakdowns. To me, as we have a pile of money. Everyone bring their budget to us, we sit down, we discuss what the budget is, and we give the money, allocate the money. Why does it have to be broken down, before they given us their budget? It's silly. I mean, that's why we're putting people against people, because there's this breakdown. To me is, Parks has needs, bring those needs to us. The fire has needs, bring those needs to us, and then we sit down, we discuss it, and we know what the revenue is, to me, that's how we could kind of come up with policies and guidelines. During the finance committee meeting, it was clearly stated that there is no guidelines or no policy regarding this asset allocations that we have. There's no, it's all just because it's been like this, and it's just per need basis, I guess. But there's no guidelines, there's no policy. Why can't we have a guideline, a policy? I think we're very smart people in this room, we could figure this out. So I don't really wanna, to me, don't wanna think about this 0.75 till we figure out what's happening with our fire department.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the budget should be prepared by the department heads. And then looking at what the costs are, is determine what monies we have and allocate it after the fact.
And then we could come up with policies such as, we're gonna maintain your budget from last year. We're not gonna take any revenue, whatever your revenue income was from last year, we'll maintain that. And then we're gonna see how we could increase it. So each year, for those additional money, we will look at things, but we make promises to both departments that whatever revenue that they were given the year before, we'll keep. I mean, these are the policies, and again, I don't have it.
I mean, the percentages.
Yeah, well, to me, it's like percentages, it's just, it comes down to dollars, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be percentages, like, fire department, for example, last year's budget was $1 million, we make sure they'll get the million. Parks was 500,000, we'll make sure they get the 500,000. So now they come for the additional money, and then we'll evaluate it at that time. But for us to be already, picking, okay, it's gonna be 70%, it's gonna be 25%, it doesn't make sense. Some years parks may need more money. Some years fire department may need more money. We need to be a little bit flexible. We need to make everyone, we just have to work with each other. So, that's how you come up with policies and guidelines, not just to say, oh, it's been like this for 10 years. Well, frankly, I've been on the board for the last 7 years of it, so it's probably my fault, So it's, just every year we just say the same things. We don't have money, but I think there's money there. Our general manager has done excellent job to bring us to the point that he's brought us in terms of getting rid of all the liabilities we had and coming up with solution. The franchise fee solution was, I remember after a meeting that we had, you and I, we sat down and we talked about it. It's like, what can we do with that money? And because Parks and Rec was in trouble, it's like, okay, we could bring it and maybe work with it. So I want a solution that works both departments, helps both departments. I think I probably talked too much now, so.
I think that's the most you've ever talked.
I think so. I guess I'm passionate about Parks and Fire Department, so. I just want a common sense solution. And just sitting there and saying that I don't want to change things because the way they were, I don't think is a common sense solution.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Would you like a motion? Hold on, I have to go back to what it says. Oh, here we go. Well,
I separate them out.
I have to
think.
separate them out. I'll make a motion, but it's gonna be a different resolution number too.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. If it's a different resolution number, because what I'd like to do is make a motion to adopt everything but the property tax allocation so that it can be looked at.
The resolution number can remain the same. I would just strike in the resolution. The first, on the second, whereas there's a reference to related to, it says to the allocation of property taxes, and it would just be, I would just strike of property taxes and so related to the allocation of community facility district funds. And then I assume your motion, once you make it, will only address the addition of policy 2, not 1.
So
you're adopting just the
Yeah.
community facilities as district funds.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make a motion that the Board of Directors desires to modify the strategic financial policies to incorporate the policy related to the Community Facility District Fund at this time.
No second.
Yeah, my interpretation of the motion is that resolution 27-2023 is requested for approval. It will be modified so that the reference in the second whereas property taxes and is stricken, and then the policy itself, policy number 1 would be on page 5 would be stricken. And policy number 2 would be relabeled as 1.
My motion stands as stated by our general manager.
Roll call.
Directors Giardini,
Yes.
Pearson,
Aye.
Bardonish.
Aye.
Logan
Aye.
and Peterson.
All right. Motion passes. General Manager's report.
So are we just disregarding the property tax allocation? Because we've had a couple of different approaches on that.
Well, I mean.
So I just
if
wanna
the
make
board-
sure, just for the record, what we're doing with
I
this.
mean, if people are willing to sit down and discuss in a civilized manner, we could make both departments functional. I would love to revisit it, but if we're just gonna say, no, let's just leave things alone, then.
Well,
then
but
there's
you've
no
also
point.
mentioned about the admin allocation as well.
Yeah,
Two
I mean,
different things.
no, well, somehow we've taken away 140,000 from fire department. In all of the models that we looked at, all the years the models that we have, we never had that money, been discussed being taken away. So to me, it just makes sense to somehow find a way to bring that money back, at least part of it. Maybe not all of it, but at least, part of it, so that would be good, make sure we have a fire department that's going to be sustainable.
I agree.
We need to discuss that, but if we don't wanna discuss everything has to be on the table.
No, I'm trying to just kind of get closure in terms of
Yeah.
what are we going to discuss, because we put out here property tax. There was something that was presented by Director Pearson, you had made a different recommendation. So I'm just looking for some closure, and you mentioned the admin allocation, which we discussed when we did the budget in June.
Yeah, and that's when I
And I
said.
agree with
that's
that
when
was a
I
big
s-
chunk for
yes,
the
and
fire
that's when
department.
I said I would agree to it only if we sat down and figured out how we could put some of that money back into the fire department, but that didn't happen, so what can I do?
So perhaps, what we should do is make a motion to table that until we have a new president and, we look at it, in the future, something like that, under the new president's
Table it
direction.
under for future discussion, probably. Whoever the president is kind of irrelevant, but
Well, I think it's a matter of, I think that the board, I think I wanna give staff at least some direction, because we brought up the property tax, we had a couple of different options out there. You brought up about the admin fee, so I think we need to provide staff some direction. So do we wanna just table it?
Table it until, we have some kind of strategic planning meeting. Discussion, something like that.
So make it a future agenda item to discuss both property tax allocation and the admin allocation.
Sure.
So
are we
future
discussing
agenda
admin
item.
allocation or just replacement funds to,
Yeah.
that's what I'm understanding. We're not really discussing the admin. fee.
They're replacing the funds.
We wanna replace, we
basically.
wanna look
He
at,
wants to just talk about, that was a big hit for the fire department.
Right.
And so
Replacing that, I
it's a matter of-
understand.
we're not actually discussing the admin fee itself, though.
No.
We're talking about replenishing the
Replenishing,
funds
yes.
for the fire. So
And maybe that's something that the fire committee can take up. I don't
that's
know.
what I was hoping to, because in that
Yeah.
same June meeting, you made your request and I kind of added on to it and said, have the fire department look into other avenues, and that didn't necessarily happen either. So I think that's fair to say, let's have the fire department discuss, or the fire committee, excuse me,
Are you
how to
comfortable with?
replenish those admin fees or explore how to, maybe it's the admin and finance committee as well as the fire committee. Discuss how you're gonna replenish those admin fees or proposals. And kind of second.
I would agree with that. I just don't wanna lose this.
No, it's important, but
Okay.
there was an opportunity there.
Take another
Okay,
stab
so
at
we're-
it, how about that?
So are you
Because
all in
people are
agreement?
going, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed that fire department is gonna be in trouble. So we need to, and I don't want the fire department to go away, so we need to figure something out before that happens, so.
Okay,
So do we need another motion to table that, or?
well, I think
Is it a
we,
motion or do you just? need to-
There's consensus to have this resurface, early next year, is that?
Yes, I think that would be
Yeah.
best.
Is that fair? We can,
Yes,
we can.
because they're, yeah,
at least prior to the budgets.
Yes, we discussed.
There are some options and one option is to, and again, they're just brainstorming at this point, but one option is you can form an ad hoc committee just for this one issue. And it wouldn't have to be made up of one of the existing committees.
Is ad hoc allowed only 2 board members?
Correct.
And no other board members can participate at the meeting?
Correct.
But be in writing or something like that, or?
Cannot participate. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you want 3 board members to participate, it should be at the board meeting.
Okay, gotcha.
It could be a special board meeting.
I just don't know, an ad hoc committee then follows under the Browns Act, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I didn't know for sure.
Or just a special meeting of the board specifically.
Okay. Sure. General managers.
Oh, just a couple of items. One, I think it went out here real recently that the Santa Parade is on December 17th.
Correct.
Starting at 4. There's some details on the website and Facebook if you want to see the route. December 17th, Sunday the 17th.
And I believe it got posted. Oh, yeah, you said it posted.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Committee reports, any committee reports? Director reports and or comments?
I guess, I know you guys heard too much from me tonight, but just a real quick, I've had a strange experience with customer service with Waste Management. I don't know if you guys have, tried contacting them.
You can't contact.
No, you can't. And it goes to statewide, like when you call, somebody picked up the phone and they asked what city I lived. I'm on Templeton. Is that in California? You know, it's that kind of stuff. So so I'm not, I know general manager gave me a number of someone to speak with. They promise they're gonna have local people answer the phone, but I don't know, I think, we gotta keep an eye on that. And also I think, we need to review their contract and make sure maybe the contract needs to be amended and changed a little bit before the next cycle in July. But, I don't know if you guys, I just was wondering if anybody has been told.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I tried calling the number on the flyer and it was,
Wrong.
yeah, it was wrong.
Oh, yeah, the flyer was
And
wrong.
then I went online to try and get the phone number and I couldn't find a number online for Waste Management. So I just kind of gave up,
Yeah,
but I've not received a bill from them yet either, so.
I have not, so we'll see.
Just on the, the board could formally at some point ask perhaps the committee, the Parks Recreation and Solid Waste Committee to review the contract terms. It might, if there is gonna be a triggering event, it would need to take place by June in order, otherwise we lose another year, so that there is a time limit there. I have had a few, we had some confused folks right at the beginning, and we've had calls in about bad phone number that was printed for Waste Management. I've had a few inquiries of folks that were trying to make arrangements. Luis Ramirez, I hope that's his name. He asked that if people have trouble, we give him his number directly. I've given that to the folks that primarily handle the phone calls. So if you know someone who's having trouble, we can get you his direct number. And I know there have been a few communication issues. As far as billing is concerned, there was a little bit of misinformation that was shared by Mid-State Solid Waste back in October when you approved the assignment of the agreement. At the beginning of October, they had actually billed for October and November. So they would have only now billed just now for December and January. I don't know if Waste Management is going to continue that every other month billing cycle in perpetuity. I was told that at least initially they would keep it the same. But I have also not received my December bill. My trash was picked up today.
It was picked up.
Okay, I have one comment. I got to have my picture taken with Melissa this last week. Thank you to the Templeton,
Recreation Foundation.
pardon me?
It's in recreation.
Yeah, the Recreational Foundation, they donated $2,100 to scholarships for the. So I don't know why they picked me. I would have taken the loot any day, but. anyway,
Stop when you're available. We just took another $2,000 donation for that scholarship fund today. so-
wow.
That's great.
And the scholarships are being used for?
Yeah, this year we got 9 for basketball.
Nice.
Yeah, see what happens next.
And was that one individual that made that donation?
Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.